Tashara Parker is an Emmy Award-winning, heavy on the Emmy Award-winning journalist, speaker, and advocate, known for using her platform to challenge traditional media norms and center authenticity, equity, and representation. So many people on this call already know exactly who Tashara is, but one thing that I just love about her is the community that she has been able to grow and the brand that she's been able to grow. And so that is exactly why I wanted to welcome her to the table.
Michaela, I am just so proud of you. You talking about all my accolades. I'm proud of the work that you are doing. I know it is not easy to start a community, even fresh out of school. I feel like you just hit the ground running out of grad school. So, congratulations to you and this
Thank
entire
you.
seen some of your posts where you're basically talking about the following and how this is your baby. So, kudos to you and for everybody that's following your journey too.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, we're going to jump right into tonight's conversation. Tashara, you are really for all of us a household name, someone to look up to, someone that is just so incredible, and you are doing amazing work. And of course, you ask a lot of questions, but tonight we get to ask you the questions. So I'm super duper excited. So we're gonna kick this off. I feel like for a lot of us, when we were younger, there were stories. I don't know if you were a scene person in your head, like if you could see the stories, but naturally, as you were growing up, what kind of stories were you drawn to?
Oh, that is such a good question. What kind of stories was I drawn to? I'll be honest with you. You know, when people tell all those stories about I wanted to be this since I was like a child, I don't have that kind of story,
Mm.
right? I didn't come into journalism or the thought of journalism and truly understood what journalism was until I was in college. In fact, just a quick story when you talk about what kind of stories I was into. I used to love watching like CSI and all of that. So when I first went to Texas A&M for undergrad, my major was entomology, which is the study of insects because I wanted to do forensics. Like I wanted to go and, look at the bodies and see what was going on. How long this body been out here?
Wow.
So it's so crazy. Now, when I got there, that science was kicking me all up and down the campus. And
Mhm.
it was just like, no, this ain't gonna cut it. And so I ended up switching to communications after many, many conversations with my advisor. But the stories for me was always something that was scientific. And it's crazy to say that now because again, when I got to A&M and started taking all those science classes, I was like, oh no, baby, this ain't for me. So ultimately, of course, I would be drawn to like more community work, advocacy. My stepmom growing up for many years had us involved in the Boys and Girls Club. And so I always knew how organizations like that and people who cared about other people in the community could help the community thrive. So advocacy and community became part of the work as early as 2012, 2014, and up until now.
No, that's so real. So it's funny, quick story on my end. I started school as a biology major because I thought I was going to be pre-med, and it was not the science classes that got me. It was the math classes.
Oh, yeah, I just didn't say that. It was that too.
My first day of statistics, I was like, I packed the bag up. I said, you know what? This ain't for me. And 2 days
Okay.
later, I was a political science major, and I think I made the best decision. So
And
I'm
did.
curious. Yes, literally, and did. And I think that's the really fun part about your story is that there are so many pivots. There are so many, spaces where you were like, you know what? This isn't working for me anymore, and you were able to pivot. But I'm also curious because I grew up on Teen Vogue, on Ebony, on Vibe, on Jet. What were some of the publications that you were drawn to early on?
So I'm from Houston, Texas, born
Mhm.
and raised in Houston. A lot of folks think I'm from Tyler, Texas for whatever reasons, and also from Dallas. I am from Houston. Okay. I'm born and raised in Trinity Garden, Texas.
Yeah.
And as far as I guess imagery that I would see, KTRK, ABC 13, that was the main quote unquote publication that I would pay attention to. It was always on. I was raised by my grandmother, and my grandmother always had Channel 13 on. Like I remember back in the day with like Marvin Zentler, Eyewitness News, the Slime and the Ice Machine. Like if I say some of these things, people from Houston from back in the day will remember some of this stuff, like the Gina Gastons, the Melanie Lawsons of the world, all those household names, Dave Ward at Channel 13. Those are people who I grew up on. And again, like I wasn't somebody who at a young age was super into like news and politics. I mean, I grew up in inner city Houston, baby. I was just trying to go to school and graduate, honey. It's a miracle that I was at Texas A&M. That's a whole nother story for another day. But, I wasn't really into all of that. Then when I got to Texas A&M, and it eventually changed my major to communication. There was a lot of deltas that would come to campus. They weren't on campus, but the alumni chapter, I started to see them around campus very often. So I got more involved in that arena and just saw women that was doing incredible things in the community. And so from my stepmom's example up until going to Texas A&M, that's where the community and the advocacy came in at. But again, growing up, KTRK ABC 13 in Houston was the station that I paid attention to the most. And I actually ended up interning there, which was crazy, a full circle moment.
I love that because we grew up as KHOU 11 girls. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, my people, they stayed with KHOU 11 on. Like, we love them down. The Cheetah
Mhm.
Crabs and like all of them. We were real, real deep into the KHOU. So I just love that. Obviously, knowing that you're a fellow Houston girly, there are some other Houston girlies on the call tonight too. So, period, H-Town, hold it down.
Can we see their comments? I would love to know like where
Yes.
they're typing in from, like what's their neighborhoods in
Yes,
Houston.
absolutely. Tell us the neighborhoods though, y'all. Y'all know we know the neighborhoods in Houston. And if you don't
Okay.
have a neighborhood, then are you really from Houston if you can't name your neighborhood? Okay, Pleasantville, that's real.
Love it.
Yes, I love
All
that.
right, Pleasantville.
I love that. So I'm curious because there are also, yes, there are some Houston girlies on the call, but there are also some comms girlies on the call, right? We love our
Yes,
comms girlies.
yes.
So for young women, especially those that are either interested or maybe starting their careers in journalism, storytelling, what does it look like, right? Because you make it look very easy. You
Oh, I
make it
hate
look
that.
you make it
Oh
look
my God.
seamless. You make it look, I mean, I hate when people tell me that too, so I know it's real. But you do, you make it look seamless. What does it
Girl.
take? Really, what does it take, right, to build your own platform
Yeah.
instead of waiting for someone to build it for you or joining someone else's?
It takes a lot of grind work and resilience. And I say that from the pits of my stomach because it is hard as all get out to build a platform. But I tell this to as many people as will listen, which is why I love the clip that you pulled and promote this episode because I was talking to someone specifically about the importance of making sure that you're building your brand while you're a part of these institutions. And by institutions, I'm saying any organization that you work for. There is a way to build your brand external of it. Of course, read through your agreements, make sure you know what is and what ain't, what you can and can't do. But at the same time, you can still be building your brand inside of the company. So for me, one of the things that I always tell young people who are just getting started in the business, and to answer your initial question, what does it look like right now? It doesn't look that great. I mean, we're hearing about layoffs almost every other week or every other month at this point. Thousands of journalists over the last 5 years have lost their jobs, and comms professionals have lost their jobs over the last 5 years. And many of those jobs are not coming back, especially as we see AI and how the rise of AI is, putting certain people out of work. And I know, again, many of us that are in front of the camera, you think, oh, well, AI can't replace me because I need to be in front of the camera. Baby, look, we watching AI replace a whole lot of things. So I would just say that they need to, one, be proficient on AI and not be one of those people that's just like, I'm not going to learn this. I don't like it. All the things that people say that are negative about it, you need to learn it because if you don't learn it, somebody else is going to learn it for you. And you need to learn how to apply that in your everyday life, in your everyday job. From a standpoint of building a brand, I think it's just, again, very important because these jobs I saw with the recent ESPN layoffs, someone, I forget which person, had signed a multi-year contract like last year.
Oh, wow.
But that didn't matter, right? And we signed these contracts thinking that we have this job stability and oh, you're going to be on for 2, maybe 3 years in some of these contracts, and they'll drop you like a bad habit. That contract works for them, not for you, unless you got a doggone good agent. All right, that contract is usually for the business. So if they'll drop you like a bad habit in a heartbeat, then I need you to be making sure you're building whatever you need to be building on the side, whether that's some type of consulting work, whether that's you writing for other publications, whether that's you keeping relationships alive. These days, especially when it comes to applying for jobs, relationships is what's going to get you in the door. You have thousands of applications coming in nowadays for one job. You think they're going to pull out your one application, even if you could be overly qualified for whatever position it is. But those relationships, you building upon those relationships with people that you're meeting, even in conversations like this, building on those relationships is really what's going to help you along the way. So if for whatever reason you're choosing not to build your brand, at the very least hone in on all those relationships and all the people that you're meeting along the way while you're in that position, so that when you are out of that position, you can reach back out and be like, hey, John at, I don't know, City of Dallas, I ain't at the station no more. What we got going on? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And just thinking about that, that's a fake example, by the way. Let me just say that. But just thinking about ways that you can utilize your relationships to continue to move forward, even after that job is no longer there.
Yeah, I think that's so real, right? I think especially as someone who works in comms full time, right? We see this happen a lot
Mhm.
where companies will downsize, they'll change direction. Like those things really do happen. And I'll say
Or
for
it
me,
does not
even
like you, but that's another story.
and
Go ahead.
no, 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 no. That is the story, right? Like, I mean, I think me and one of my good friends, she's on the call. We've had this conversation a lot. Like, that could be the reason why you very well get pushed up out the door is because one
Yeah.
person doesn't care for you. And it's not even a reflection of your work product, right? Like sometimes that has nothing to do with it. So I think that's a real thing for you to say. And
Yeah.
even realer, a bigger conversation that at some point really does need to be had,
Mhm.
because that's ultimately what's happening. And so I'm also curious because you've talked about this before, but the moment that you pivot, right? What does it take to bet on yourself and actually pivot? Because it's one thing to say you're going to pivot, it's another thing to actually do so. What does that moment look like?
One, it takes a lot of faith, and you have to be able to cut through the noise. There are going to be a lot of people, and I'll say specifically for my situation, because I left at the height of my career. There will be a lot of people saying, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And they're not trying to hear anything that you're saying about why you're choosing to do that in that very moment. You can be in a dark hole for weeks and they could care less. So you're going to have to be able to rise above the noise when it comes to the pivot. Also, now, there are a whole lot of steps and things that I would tell you to take, steps to take before you decide to jump out, even with all the faith in the world. Obviously, having some savings, et cetera, and making sure you can take care of yourself to where you're not going to put yourself in a bad position. But making sure that you are truly ready to survive the pivot. Because even when you get into, so for example, for me, I've created the Tashara Parker show. I have Loud Women Lead. I'm speaking, I am hosting, I'm doing brand partnerships, all these things. And people will still come up to me and say, well, what are you doing now?
Mm,
They'll still come up to me and say that, and they'll name all the things that I'm doing, but to them in their mind, that's not as great as what I had.
mm,
So you have to be ready to have those uncomfortable conversations, but you also have to be ready to stand on business. And speaking of business, you got to know how to run a business. Roland Martin is one of my mentors and someone who has given me a lot of advice when it comes to starting a media brand and a media company. I already had a brand, but the business
mhm.
of media is something that he has been sharing and teaching me. And I didn't know how much I didn't know, but I'm always a student of the game. That's another thing. You got to be a student of the game and know when to reach out and ask questions. But the reason I was able to reach out and ask questions is because that is a relationship that I have tried to make sure that I salvage and have conversations. All the things that you need to do to make sure that you're honing in on those relationships that you currently have. And so, I mean, there's a lot that goes into a pivot, but certainly having faith in yourself. And again, there are many, many steps I would tell you to take from a standpoint of having a savings. If you have health insurance, making sure you get all of your health screenings and all those things out of the way, because when you take that pivot, it's going to be a lot of things that change,
Yeah.
especially if you take an entrepreneurship route. Okay. So you need to be ready for all of that. And again, be ready for those, mentally be ready for those conversations, because what you're doing now, because people have seen you a certain way for so long, especially in my case, they've seen you on TV for so long. I say so long, 10 years. They've
That's
seen me on
all
TV
around.
for a decade.
Decade.
And so to see me do something else, meaning in my mind, I'm like, look, I'm ahead of the game. Watching what's happening with the media industry, I feel like me pivoting at the point that I did, July 2024, and building my brand outside of TV news has certainly positioned me well to be, at the forefront of trying to lead and creating my own media company. Now, I didn't say media network. I hear that thrown around a lot. but keep creating my own media company, my own media, and putting it out there how I want it to be put out there. So definitely having faith in yourself and being comfortable with all the noise that's going to be surrounding whatever pivot you make. And some of that's going to come from family too, some of the people closest to you.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think one of the things, because the next question sort of leans into this, but I think sometimes it's also having to recognize that it is a business. I don't know about you, but I know when I first started, I'm like, oh, this is just for fun. Like, I'm enjoying this, like, I'm having a good time.
Oh no, I was never thinking that. I
Oh,
needed
really? Oh,
no,
yeah, she said no. I'm in it.
absolutely
See, I
not.
thought it was just a game. Like, I
I was
can't
rolling
be.
up expeditiously because I, again, thought I understood the business of media. And a lot of people don't understand the business of media. A lot of people get in it and saying, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to do a community, I'm going to do one, two, three, four, five. But on truly understanding the business of how do businesses make money as media organizations. And until a person truly understands that, they ain't gonna make no money doing this.
Yeah.
They ain't gonna make no money. So, and again, brand partnerships has been played a big role in a lot of the part of my pivot, which some people recognize that, maybe some don't. But I definitely do a lot of brand partnerships and I do a lot of speaking engagements, speaking and hosting. So majority of my coins comes from that. I am still learning and building this media portion.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's helpful for anyone that's thinking, I want to do the same, right? Is like the amount of work
Yes.
that goes into it is like insane sometimes. Like there are days where I'm like, why am I still doing this? Like I've been working on this all day. But you
Hello?
like even if you and I think and you can speak to this, I'm sure, but even when you have a team, a lot of times a lot of that still falls on you. At the end of the day, your brand is your name.
Yes.
You are the brand. You are the business, right? Like that's
Oh,
what it boils down to.
that is so good. And I am so happy you said that because just even today, I feel like I've been responding to my team all day. And I wanted to go and create content, batch create content, but I literally have been at this computer responding to my team. I got out maybe a little bit earlier for a few minutes, but I've been at this computer all day responding to my team because you still have to grow that team. They have to know you, they have to understand you. I've only had my show since the beginning of February, and I've only been on my own since July 2024. You ain't got that long in the game. So you still really building everything. And so your team has to get comfortable with you. They have to know you, they have to understand you, and they have to know how you do things, right? So that they can use their expertise to elevate whatever it is that you have going on. So yes, even with having a team, and I don't have a whole lot of people, I have less than five now. But even with having a team of folks, you're still having to make sure that things are getting done and that it's going to fall back on you. I'll give you an example. One of my team members today, we were getting ready to develop actually one of my speaking courses. And as we are developing the speaking course, this is kind of breaking news because I haven't shared this with anybody.
Ooh, exclusive.
As we were getting ready to develop the speaking course, one of the options was, oh, and you can meet with them every week. And I was like, who can do what now? I cannot. That is not the proper use of my time. And to your point, people can come up with all these ideas, but it still falls back on you to get it done. And until we're at a point where it doesn't fall back on us, we got to make sure that we're making the right decisions, especially at the beginning of forming your company, because you don't want to get any bad. I mean, bad press is press. But you don't want to get a whole lot of bad press surrounding your name, especially something that you have worked years, a decade plus to build. So, I mean, keeping that in mind too when it comes to the business side of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think even it was a few days ago you put out a thread and you were saying like for baby journalists, like you have to meet your
Oh,
deadlines.
yes.
But realistically, even as a business, right? Like there are deadlines that you have to meet. There are people that you are still responsible to, and that there are people, there are now, when you have a team, there are now people that you are also responsible for, right?
Yes.
So I think that's the big thing. So I'm curious, right? So you leave this station, you take this big leap, but what was the moment, right? What was the minute where you knew it was time to bet on Tashara?
I think there was a series of moments, so I can't pinpoint exactly one, but it was just a series of moments.
Mm.
And it wasn't just that I thought bet on Tashara. I saw the writing on the wall as it relates to the industry. And let me be very clear, that was not the sole reason that I left. But I saw the writing on the wall and I saw how things were going. And I saw that I wanted to, elevate and tell more of my own stories. For example, there are so many partnerships that people have been applauding that, God has sent my way over the last year plus that I never in a million years would have been able to do if I was signed under a contract with a network. It just absolutely could not and would not have happened. And who am I to get in the way and block my blessings of being a part of all these different initiatives? And so you have to, at some point, understand that if you feel deep down that you have so much more to offer this world and this one thing, which was at the time, my contract was not necessarily getting in the way because I had stability, I had health insurance, I was working for one of the top stations in the country. Like I had a good thing going, but at the same time, I knew that I wanted to do more. And so there wasn't an exact moment. Of course, I left July 24th, 2024. I hate that I remember that day. I hope I said the right one, but I know it's July 2024, the last week of July. Anyways, I knew that I needed to leave or get from under contract to be able to do some of the things that I wanted to do. But at the same time, if you have a good agent, there's a lot of things that you can still do in legacy media. I think oftentimes we are afraid to ask questions because we feel like, oh, they're not going to let me do that, or oh, this or oh, that. Now, a lot of times they probably won't. But I would encourage anyone who, especially if they're in media right now, legacy media, and they're under contract, ask questions. These days, I feel like with everything that's happening, especially with so many journalists becoming content creators and influencers, I feel like they may be a little lenient. You just need to ask some questions, okay? Ask some questions and see what that looks like. So there wasn't an exact moment for me, but I knew that I was not going to be able to sign a third contract while I was at my former TV station.
Yeah, that's good. And I think recognizing, like you said, recognizing the writing on the wall, I had something very similar take place. And I think for me, I'm so glad, and I feel like it was nothing but discernment that I was able to recognize when things were no longer working. Because I think sometimes, right, we get comfortable and,
Yeah.
for example, I could say like, oh, I had really good benefits and there was
Right.
stability. You get comfortable. But when
Until you
God
get
is
like
ready,
fired.
yeah, that or until you get uncomfortable and you're like, oh, like is it really worth the benefits if my mental health is depleting? Like what's the
All of
trade-off?
that.
Yeah, what's the trade-off, right? What do you get for it? So I
That is
want to pivot
good.
a little bit because we've talked about this a lot. I've seen it a lot on social media. It's becoming a really big topic. The word representation, right? We talk a lot about representation, but
Yeah.
not necessarily always about ownership. So I'm curious, what do you think I would say no. Actually, I'm going to say why is Black-owned media so critical right now? Why is it so critical that y'all are able to tell these stories?
Mm. So you mentioned ownership, you mentioned representation. And I think that representation means nothing without ownership. And I say that because if you have representation without ownership, you still have borrowed space, right? We have to be in positions where we are able to share the types of stories that we want and need to tell. I'll give you a prime example. Running the today is a great example. The Nolan Wells press conference aired today.
Mm,
I saw that on the NAACP page first, the Griot, another Black media space, Don Lemon, another Black media space, and a couple of others. I know I'm missing some folks. I didn't see that on a major
mm,
network. Now, if they had it, please forgive me if I missed it.
yeah.
But I didn't see them carrying that entire press conference live. Even if they ran snippets of it, I saw the entire thing on these Black media stations. And so, if we're going to be able to dig deep into the stories that we find important, it's going to be on us and up to us to make sure that we own the platforms where we're sharing stories. I know I can't even think of many Black-owned media. I believe the Griot, and please forgive me if they are like a 50-50 type deal, but the Griot, Roland Martin, who is truly the blueprint when it comes to owning your media. He left TV1 CNN and started his own company. Of course, we see what Don Lemon is doing right now. And there are many others that are starting networks. I think even with Charlemagne the God, but I think that one is 50. I think he owns majority of the Black Effect podcast network, but part of that is still owned by our iHeartMedia, which is not Black owned.
Yeah.
And so the other ones that I mentioned, to my knowledge, are fully owned Black media entities.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And I mean, I think realistically, a lot of times, and I do so obviously in press, right? We see it where they are not picking these stories up, right? They don't pick the stories up until they are the story, right? Like you have to prove that these stories are worth telling, and there
Yes.
has to be buy-in, right? They need to see someone else do it, but then that company may need to see someone else do it first, right? So there's like this tug of war. Now, I love this. Tatiana in the chat said, I discovered Tashara through an NABJ newsletter. Thank you for
Wow.
holding it down. I love that.
What NABJ newsletter? What they talking about over there? What?
I love that. That is so good. I love that. So we are going to move on because, of course, we still want to talk about journalism. We still want to talk about Black journalism. I will tell you, my introduction to you was when you were doing work around the Crown Act.
Oh, sure.
And yes, and I remember seeing that interview and I was just like, okay, like this is so good. And it was a story that was close to me, right? I talked to Representative Bowers a few weeks ago about the Crown Act itself. And one of the things I told her was that I stopped getting perms in fourth grade. And
Wow.
I remember the day my mom was like, no more perms, like you're gonna be natural. And I was like, girl, just because you want to be natural don't mean I want to be natural. Right. But I told her how important it was to not only see her, but to see you, right? You're a journalist. We're seeing you on TV. But one thing about you, this is like a little pause. Your hair is always tea, right? No bad hair days. Always tea. Always
Please,
good.
girl, you got to go back through the archives. The
Okay, maybe
archives.
that's what it is. I gotta dig a little deep. She said you gotta, but the braids, I don't like. I'm like, drop the braider in the chat because the braids are always tea, and you
She's
just
hair savvy. She's hair
so
savvy.
good. Somebody type that in the chat, okay? Somebody drop it in the chat. But I love that. But I'm curious, right? Stories like that, how do you navigate the balance between unbiased, but also really telling these stories that need to be told?
I mean, it's our lived experience. And I know oftentimes in journalism, to your point, being unbiased, that's what we live, die, and breathe on, a hill that folks live, die, and breathe on. But I think we're living in just tumultuous times where if something is impacting you and not only impacting you, but you know that it's impacting a certain community, you have to speak truth to power. And I know that may sound cliche to some people, but even with the Crown Act and hair becoming, part of my story, I was not about to let that die down because one, when folks started saying, oh, calling me nappy headed and, wearing they called it a party hairstyle, just all kind of stuff as it relates to me wearing my natural hair on TV. And I just wasn't gonna let that die down that quick. So even before I knew all the details about the Crown Act, I was still planning to say something in regards to folks saying what they had to say about my hair that morning on TV. The Crown Act was a bonus to find out about it and all the work that had been poured into the Crown Act even up until that point. And testifying on behalf of the Crown Act as a journalist, again, something that we usually would not do. But I knew that it was important because one, people who look like me, but also knowing that if I didn't do it, then who was gonna do it?
Hmm.
So it was just important for me to use my own experience and apply it to the story. And sometimes you have to do that, especially in this day and age where people lying, crooks doing what they doing. You got to dig in. This is not the day and age to be quiet. This is not the day and age to just let stories be told the way that we've been telling them. That's why, unfortunately, a lot of folks are turning from, that's one of the reasons. There are many, but a lot of folks are turning away from some of these large legacy media organizations because they're not providing any perspective. You need perspective in storytelling because people want to know that they're being seen as well as being heard.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. And I mean, realistically, we also have, right, organizations that have traditionally had non-Black writers telling
Yep.
Black stories, right? And they're either one coming to it with no perspective, or when people are trying to provide perspective, they're the owners of what gets added, right? They're the owners of what gets told. And so I think a large part of that is like with the ownership, with the Don Lemons, the Tashara Parkers, like we are hearing these stories in a way that one makes sense to the communities that really need to hear them. But also, y'all are people that are relatable and we understand you and we know you and we know
Yep.
that you have either A, similar lived experiences or you know someone that does, right? Like the stories that y'all are telling are so important because you know how important they are, right? So I love
Yeah.
that. I love that so much. And you kind of led me straight into this one, but I'm just curious, right? From your perspective, what are we still getting wrong about how Black communities, especially Black women, are
Mhm.
portrayed in mainstream legacy media?
Um, that is such a loaded question. A
Yeah.
great one, but it's loaded because I still have a lot of friends that are in legacy media. And honestly, I was interviewing for jobs like a couple of weeks ago. So, let me say this. I feel like there needs to be a conversation about the mask that Black women still have to wear in legacy media. And you everybody knows about characters and shows and TV shows and cartoons, et cetera. Like characters, right? And I feel like oftentimes, when you go to work, like it's a character. Like it's almost like you're portraying a character. Not everybody. I'm not saying this for everybody, but it's almost like there's still a facade, there's still a mask that's on. Like you can't just let loose. And I'm not saying let loose like go in there acting a fool, but what I'm saying is I have yet to see consistently like Black women just being able to show up, like just show up. And I'm not just talking about wearing their natural hair. I'm just saying be able to show up. And I'm not even just talking about the things that are on TV. Let's be very clear at all. I'm not just talking about aesthetic. I'm not just talking about outward appearance. I am talking about navigating, not even just news, but navigating corporate as Black women in media. I think there's still a conversation to be had. And I think that from a standpoint of what we are missing, I think that's what we're missing. The conversation surrounding the Black women who are in legacy media and what they're having to deal with right now, because they are dealing with a lot.
They are. Who, Lord, God bless us all. We are all dealing with a lot, right? I think as Black women, there's just so many things. We talked about this, what, yesterday with Equal Pay Day, right? Black
Oh,
women
yeah.
are still not getting paid enough. Like it's the small things.
Can I
And
tell
there's,
you a story about
yeah, go
that?
ahead, of course.
This wasn't even going to come up. I have one of my younger journalists, I give her feedback and advice all the time. She's not that much younger than me, but she's been in the business about 15 years. That's almost 2 decades, okay? She still has yet in a business that any field you are in, if you have been in that field for 15 years, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't have hit six figures yet.
Yeah,
Like, why am I doing a job for 15 years and I am nowhere near keeping up with inflation? And I have not hit six figures plus in 15 years.
yeah,
I say, now, some got to change.
yeah.
Some
That's
got to,
egregious.
because I want you to live the life that you want to live. And clearly, it's not happening with you having to do multiple jobs
Yeah,
to do what you want and live the life that you want to live.
yeah,
I want more for us. And I'm just like, what are we doing? That journalism is a very tough job. Being on air in journalism is a tough job. You have to do a lot. You have to still present, right? You still have to go out and write and produce a story, and maybe you're an anchor or whatever the case may be. It's just a lot that goes into being what they call now a MMJ, a multimedia journalist. If you're not hitting six figures after 15 years, y'all tell me, is that not a problem?
no, that's deplorable, actually. That's exactly what it is. It's deplorable. But I mean, again, to your point, that's the story of so many Black women, right?
I know.
I mean, politics. I know people in politics that have been doing this work for years. They can't make it out of 80. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
but
they're
are you talking about politicians or just working in
no
politics?
working in politics, not the
I was gonna say
politicians.
because politicians
They gonna get theirs. That's a little
yeah,
different.
they
Yeah,
gonna get their money other
that's a
ways.
little different. But I mean, for the Black women, and I think this is a conversation that has been had a lot more in these spaces. But for example, and I'm sure it's the same in journalism, you couldn't get an internship as a young Black woman because a lot of them didn't pay, right? So if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have family members in DC, if you don't have the means to fly to DC, if you can't provide for yourself, how do you get an entry, right? How do you get an entryway into this world if you can't afford it, right? It's pay to play.
Good. And yes, I do feel like I used to say many, many years ago, and of course, there are many of us who ain't got no money. We make it in journalism every single year, right? But what I used to say that journalism is a rich person's job. And I used to say that because, a lot of the young people that I was around, especially in my first and second job, they would get money from their parents. So even though we was making, like in my first job, I was making maybe 20 something thousand dollars. It wasn't nothing crazy. Okay. I remember I had the flu in my first job and I couldn't even afford the medicine from the pharmacy and had to beg the pharmacist to split the medicine so that I can pay like this much now and another amount later. That's a whole nother story. But anyways, I was making 20 something thousand dollars. And I'll never forget the people that were around me. They were able to call their parents like, hey, like, I need this. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I don't have anybody to call. And so I used to be like, man, it ain't nothing but, people with, and I said rich, but I mean people who had the means to be able, to your point, take a summer off and not get paid or take a vacation. You know what I mean? But even for me, I didn't have a problem getting internships, especially once I got into grad school, and I did a couple in undergrad as well. Now, I still didn't feel prepared after I left undergrad to go straight into journalism, but again, another topic for another day. But still, overall, I think that certain jobs and certain positions require you to have someone to lean on, or in one of my mentees' situations, go get another job
Yeah.
and try to figure it out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are doing just that. So, Shar, I want to say thank you. So,
Yeah,
before we get into the Q&A portion, right, before people can come off mute, you can ask your questions if you want to drop them in the chat. Feel free to do so. We love to do a lightning round because I'm nosy and I like to know the things about the guests that we bring on. So, I'm curious. Give me a platform outside of the Tashara Parker show.
yeah.
Give me a platform, podcast, or creator that you think more people should know about.
Platform podcast or creator, I think more people should know about. Ooh, hold on, hold on. Lil Navy.
Okay. Why?
I just think she has just a nasty style to the work that
Mhm.
she does. And I love the work that she does. In fact, she and I are going to do a conversation when she comes to Dallas on her tour. But I just think she's just nasty with it in
I
in
love
in the
that.
best way.
I love
Yeah.
that. One word to describe the season that you are currently in.
Transition, season of
Ooh,
transition.
okay, that's good. That's good. Now, can we dig in or can you
I
tell us?
mean, I think it's clear as day, right?
Yeah.
Leaving my corporate TV job to starting a media company to understanding brand partnerships to understanding my own full brand to understanding the full extent of what I bring to the table to charging my worth because people still try to play
Mm.
in your face.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Um, yeah, just a season of transition and a season of becoming the woman that I know that God intended on me becoming. Because oftentimes you get stuck in the mindset of who you were, even before I had, a failed relationship, all the things, even before all of that. Like this whole season has been a season of transition and rediscovering the woman who God created me to be, not the person who I was.
Ooh, that's so good. I hope y'all are taking notes because that is so good. And I also want to say, because I love that you just said this, sometimes people think that the moment you pivot, that is the end of the transition. They're like,
No,
okay, like I pivoted, my transition is over. And they
no,
assume like, okay, you do the pivot and now you have everything together. Some people, it takes years to finally get to the point where it's like, okay, like this is what I've been working towards. So I'm so
absolutely,
glad you said that because that's so real.
absolutely.
Now,
Yeah,
there's another comment. Someone said my first job as an MMJ, I was making less than $13 an hour and
yep.
had to get a
All
second
right.
job. Thank you for your honesty. That is insane. Pay people
So welcome.
more. Pay people their worth. Okay,
Yeah.
a person in journalism who
Oh, and
inspires
can I
others.
just
Oh,
say
go ahead.
real quick, yes, pay people what they're worth, but to anybody that's on this call, if you are afraid to tell somebody your salary, that is a problem. People will ask me about salary all the time, and I'm talking about people who are my age, older and or younger, will ask me about salary in the business, but when you ask them the same question, crickets. And I literally had to tell somebody, look, if you're gonna ask me something, which I am more than willing to answer, I need you to make sure you tell the next person what they need to hear too. Don't come over here asking me questions and you know I'm gonna answer it. And then, somebody else asks you, it's cricket. I'm like, don't do that. So anybody that's on this call in or whoever will see this, make sure you're unafraid to talk salary. Salary is what's keeping us at $13 an hour because I was in that same range. Salary is what's keeping us at $25,000 a year, starting off as a journalist, which is insane to even say. And not many are making way more than that, starting at some of the levels that we were at in some of those small markets. So,
Mhm.
yeah, no, talk about salary, talk about money, be unafraid to talk about it and have conversations because we keep talking about Black women's equal pay day. Man, y'all don't even want to tell people what y'all making.
Yeah.
So let's have some real conversations if we gonna do that.
No, that's real because I will say I was at the last place that I worked at. That was the conversation that I was having because I'm advocating for more. And I'm like, so what are you making? Like, we're doing comparable work. What are you making? And
Yeah,
no one wants to say anything.
right.
Nobody wants. And then because we work in politics, we work for the local government, the
Yeah.
Houston Chronicle is going to print our salaries anyway. So then you see it and it's like, oh, that's why you didn't want to share because you knew. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Okay, again, I follow you very closely. What is your favorite way to recharge after a long week?
Ooh, I love a good workout. That's cliche, huh? I love a good
Uh,
workout. And when I say workout, I mean like a good like stretch, sound
mm,
bath type class where I can just
ooh,
relax. And also, what you may have seen is I love not doing nothing. I love when I don't have nothing to do. A weekend where I don't have anything to do is the best weekend. People are like, "Oh, you want to do this?" No, I don't actually.
yeah.
I will sit on this couch, order me some food because usually during the week I'm eating all the food that I done meal prepped on Sunday, like throughout the week. And so by Friday, I'm like, ugh, like I don't want no more of that.
Yeah.
And so if I can order me some food, I love me some acai. I have a tub that's like this big of acai. It's crazy.
Oh my
That I get from like Restaurant Depot. It's supposed to be for the restaurant. Anyway, so if I can have me some acai and order me some food, that is the best weekend. Nobody bothering me, nobody on my line about deadlines. No,
God. Because
I
I'm sure they're far and few in between, right? I'm sure they're
very because
very
I have
few.
events. That's
Yeah.
weekends when I make my most of my
Mhm.
money.
So
So
I'm
yeah.
sure they are very far and few in between. And last question in our lightning round, are you an early bird or are you a night owl?
So obviously, after waking up for morning news for 5 years straight at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, I think I'm an early bird. But what is crazy is even though I'll wake up early and get stuff done, I'll crash by like 12 or 1,
Mm,
which maybe I need to go get some more vitamins or something. I don't know. But I'll crash by 12 or 1. And then I'll get up at like 5, 6. And this not every day, right? But I've noticed that in the evening time, baby, I be on that laptop going to town. I
mm,
will get some work done. And maybe that's too because I don't have people bothering me or answering their questions because after 5, most of my team is checked out.
yeah.
And so I can get a lot done in the evening time. So that may be part of it too. But normally I'm waking up at about 4:30, 5, because I'm trying to go to Pilates at 5. And I
Mm.
schedule it on purpose so I don't waste my money.
See, that's real. Now, me, I don't know. I just get my good thoughts around like midnight. Like I like to go to
Oh
bed.
yeah.
It's something about that midnight hour. That's when I feel like that's when the thoughts hit. And I don't know if you this quote. It's Michael Jackson. He's like, I try to do stuff quickly before Prince take my ideas. I'm like, before God get an idea away, let me go. Let me just write it down or something. So I keep a little
Don't
journal
just
about it.
write it down, execute.
I'm
Because
like,
baby, you'll have somebody that'll take an idea in a minute. You're like, no, that was in my
you
head.
wake up and you're like, wait a minute now. The Lord done gave the thing away because I done went back to bed, rolled over on my dreams. Now, y'all, that was our lightning round. I want y'all to be able to come in, ask Tashara some questions. If you have questions for Tashara, feel free to come off of mute and you can ask her, or if you're more comfortable dropping in the chat, that works too.
Let me know what y'all
And
got.
feel free, you don't have to raise your hand, just come off mute when you're ready. Because I know y'all got questions.
Did we do that good or what?
That's what I'm saying. Did we do that good? Because if we did,
Was there anything that you had that I didn't answer?
Do I have, I have so many questions for you. Like, I could do this all day because I just think you're so brilliant. And like, I love the work that you're doing. I want to know, how'd you come up with Hey Cousins? Where did that come from?
You know what? I would see people out and about, and before I knew it, if I'm at a grocery store, I would hear somebody say, "Hey, cousin."
Mm.
And it just caught on. It caught on. People just started saying, "Hey, cousin, hey, cousin, hey, cousin." When I'm out somewhere, they ain't saying Tashara. They'll be like, "You,
Mm.
hey, cousin." I'm like, "Yeah,
That
yeah."
is
And
so
so it
cute.
just kind of caught on after a while. And I think the reason it caught on was because of how I treat people when I meet them who I don't know. And I always treat folks like family. And I think maybe that's the Southern, girl in me or whatever the case may be. But I do realize that people feel like they know me. Now, sometimes they be acting like they know me a little too close because they be grabbing on my shoulder, pulling my shirt, all kind of stuff. I'm like, look now, ain't no TV no more. I can act a fool. So watch out. But no, I think the hey cousin thing just kind of caught on after a while because I treat everybody like family.
Yes, I love that because I think it was something the first time I ever watched you and you said, I
Mhm.
was like, this is
Did I
real
say it on
cute.
TV? I'm pretty sure
Yes.
I said it on
No, it
TV.
was like, yes. And I was like, this is real cute. And it does. It feels very familiar. It just feels
Yeah.
real good, real black, real Southern. I love it. So
Yeah.
my final question for you, right? As someone who has you've worked in structured newsroom, obviously you're now working independently. How do
Mm.
you think, I guess, visibility, access, opportunity, what do you think that looks like for women today versus when you first started your career almost, what, over 10 years ago now?
Well, I was in a highly visible field anyway. But even back then, when I started my career 10 years ago, I don't know what it was with me in social media, but I always was somebody who was out there. I never allowed just the job. It's like I was a natural marketer, and I'm not even trying to toot my own horn because people tell me now, like, you're just good at marketing. I'm like, no, I'm not. In my head, I don't feel like I'm a marketer, like whatever the Webster's dictionary version of what a marketer is. But in so many words, I am because I am unafraid to put myself out there. And so, even from, again, 10 years ago, 20, well, 12 years ago, now 2014, when I initially got into journalism, I was still always on social media. So, I was building a following before it became a following or before it became influencing or creating or whatever. I was always doing that. I was going live behind the scenes before it became a popular thing to do. And so I think visibility now looks very similar to visibility even 12 years ago. It may look different in how you execute it, hands down. But when I say similar, I mean just putting yourself out there. So many of us are afraid of our own talents. So many of us are so good. I saw a video a day or two ago of this lady saying, send this video to somebody who's really good at what they do, but they're afraid to put themselves out there. And I think that is so important because so many of us have great expertise in a lot of different industries and things, and we're just afraid to put ourselves out there. And it's not just that we are afraid, we are fearful of what people are going to say about us. There have been some things that I have been afraid, especially making this transition into independent media, independent journalism. At first, even when it came to press conferences, I was like, oh, but I had all this support at first when it came to like having a photographer. I mean, we used to go out, I had a photographer, I had me. It was, like you had the whole nine, the whole setup. They will set up the camera. You just over there taking your notes, writing, and get ready to ask your questions because you just talented, right? Now it's just me when I go out on scenes or when I go to a press conference. I was just at the James Tallarico Town Hall and it was just me, right? Um, but I have a name recognition here in, Texas, Dallas to be specific, and they still treated me like, the same member of the press. And so I just think it's visibility is the same as it was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but it looks different in how you decide to put yourself out there. And you got to be unafraid of what people are going to say about you, how they're going to perceive you. In fact, if you're not afraid to share certain things, why are you even posting it? I need you
Mm.
to have like just a little fear, like, oh, I don't know what they're gonna say
Yeah.
about this one. I
Yeah.
don't know what they're gonna say. In fact, you posted something, and I wish you would have dug deeper on it, but I ain't gonna mess with you. You posted something about politicians, everybody, so concerned about James Tallarico, but there are other white liberals who are not speaking up during this season or are not tapped in with Black communities as well. But the heat has just been mostly on Tallarico. And I thought that was brilliant because that is true, in my opinion. And I think they're falling by the wayside because, a lot of them gonna ride his coattails because people gonna vote all the way down the ticket. And so I would just say that if you are afraid to post something, which I'm not saying you are afraid to call out them names, because I would have been hard for
No, and
me.
here's the thing,
I'm
there's a
not saying,
video
hold on.
coming.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying you were afraid to call out the names,
yeah,
but I can sense by even reading that post, at that point, you didn't want to put it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so I just think to myself, if everything I'm posting, if it's not going to make somebody mad, if you go to my Facebook, you be like, Lord, what is going on? Everybody pissed off in the comments. Great. And so you go over, I have some of the highest engagement ever on Facebook because they just be able to act in a fool.
yeah.
And so if you go and you think about your posts and what you're going to share with people, is it going to make people feel something?
That's good.
That's what visibility means. It can look different for everybody, but put yourself out there, be unafraid of what people are going to say, post something to make people feel something. And that
That's
could be on many different platforms.
Yeah, that's good. So there is a question in the chat. Jamia said, you mentioned rediscovering the woman God created you to be rather than who you used to be. How did you discern the difference between perseverance in a season where God was calling you to pivot? That's a great question.
How do you discern the difference between perseverance and a season where God was calling you to pivot? I think I'm still trying to discover it all. What I am allowing myself to have is agency over my decision making. I think oftentimes we make one decision and we think, okay, well, I didn't put this one out there. I got to stick with it. No, you don't. You ain't got to do nothing. In fact, life's too short for you to stick with whatever it is if it's not working. Now, things take time to work, but life is too short not to lean into the blessings that God has called you up to. And I say up to, right? Because a lot of times we're operating on our own beliefs and we're not leaning into what God has called us to do. I will say too, just from a standpoint of how did I know the difference? I don't think I did. Michaela mentioned this a little bit earlier. I was just so uncomfortable with so much around me. I had no choice. It was God and God alone that got me through my season of not just leaving my TV station, but again, I mentioned I went through a really tough breakup at the time. And so all of that was God. And if I didn't have him to lean into and onto, oh baby, I think it was clear as day. So I think I'm still discovering what that looks like, and I'm not at the end yet. We're still writing multiple chapters to this book. In fact, y'all ain't seen nothing but the intro. We might got chapter one, chapter two, y'all might have saw, but we still on chapter three at this point. So the book is still being written, and I think there's so much more that is going to go into the pages of it.
I love that. I think that is the perfect note to end on. Tashara, I want to say thank you so much. Tati says she can't wait to read the book.
One day,
One
hello.
day, Thaisa said Tashara Parker is a force, a cousin. I want to encourage everyone to subscribe and support her.
Oh,
I
thank
dropped the link in the bio. She said this field is hard, and to tell our story, we need folks who know how to market themselves so we can get share our experiences from a
yeah.
trusted voice. That's so good. Heavy on the
Thank you.
trust, right? Heavy on the trust. But yes, I dropped the link. Y'all be sure to subscribe. Tashara, tell them when they can lean in. When can they catch you? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so right now, speaking of having agency over my own decisions, on Tuesdays and Thursdays is usually when we are live, but I have been leaning into releasing more episodes of my podcast, which is a part of the Tashara Parker Show. And so every Thursday at 12 p.m., you can look for the latest episode, but there are so many episodes out there. I would love for you to go and watch the Tashara Parker Show loud and clear. You can see all the episodes that we've already done. Even if you just subscribe and leave a quick little like, on each video, it all helps, it all pays off. And so that's one way to support because we'll release those episodes every Thursday. And again, if you want to follow my work, it's at Tashara Parker on most platforms. The only one that it's different is Facebook, which is Tashara Parker on air, ONAIR at the end.
Putting it in the chat now. Yes, make sure y'all follow, keep up with the incredible work that Tashara is doing. And Tashara, thank you so much.
You are
Obviously,
so
I
welcome.
recognize you could be doing anything, right? You could be resting, chilling, preparing for tomorrow, but you chose to spend it at the table with us. So I truly, truly appreciate that.